and welcome in to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow hosts and friends, Lino and Caelan. Today is an exciting day for the Irrational Confidence Podcast because it marks a full season covering the NBA. It's our first season start to finish,
Whoop.
so really appreciate everybody that's been listening. Caelan posted on Twitter over the weekend that we reached 1,000 plays total on our episode, so that was an exciting achievement for all of us. So thank you to everyone who has listened. And it's cool that it's kind of culminating, right as the finals end. Of course, we're going to have off-season content, talking draft, free agency, everything like that. But we will cover the champions, the Boston Celtics, even though this is a pod run primarily by Lakers fans and Heat fans. So it will be tough, but we must give them their kudos because they are deserved. Before we get specifically into the championship coverage, we do want to go over some news and notes. And then at the end of the pod, like the last episode, we'll also cover some exciting draft prospects for you guys. First piece of news is Jeff Van Gundy has been hired to be the lead assistant coach for the Los Angeles Clippers. He was a special, I believe they called it an analyst or advisor for the Celtics this season. This news came out today right after they won the championship. So it seems like if you're taking a lead assistant job that Jeff Van Gundy is interested in being a head coach again. It's been a while since he coached. I believe it was last with the Rockets, like in the T-Mac Yao kind of era. So it'd be interesting to see if he comes back around, just something to monitor. Another little bit of coaching news. Fred Vinson has been hired to go to Detroit. If you don't know that name, it's probably because he's an assistant coach, but he is a longtime shooting coach with the Pelicans. So he's credited as fixing Lonzo's shot, making Ingram a much better shooter. So he's in that like top tier Chip England kind of shooting coach. So going to Detroit, where you have Cade, who shot, is okay, but hasn't translated like people thought. Sar Thompson, obviously, it would be huge if he could fix his jumper. So as far as assistant coaches go, it's pretty significant news. So it'll be fun to kind of monitor that going forward. We're recording on Tuesday the 18th, and free agency is kind of starting. You can communicate with your own free agents. There's still coaching positions open, but there's rumors they're already filled. So we don't have anything concrete to work on. JJ Redick to the Lakers sounds like it's happening, but we'll have to wait and see before that becomes official because we've heard that before. And then there was a whole Dan Hurley saga. So we'll see what happens. But fellas, to get into the real meat of the episode, the Boston Celtics are the 2024 NBA champions. They beat the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games. I think we can kind of get into this most recent game if you guys want to, or we can pull more from kind of our overall thoughts about these teams, what it means about the league. So I'm really excited to hear wherever you guys want to go with it. Caelan, I'll throw it to you first. What were your main takeaways from this finals?
I think you kind of hit some of it in the intro, Micah. As bitter as the Celtics' victory may make us feel, I do feel confident saying that they are the most deserving champion in the NBA this season. They were the best team. They had the best offseason coming in. They were probably the best team on paper. And when the season started, it was clear when they won their first 20 home games of the season that this was going to be one of the best teams in the league. A lot of people had them at least making it to the finals, and their playoff run on the way to the finals wasn't as impressive as we like or we typically see, but I think that's okay when from start to finish that this was the best team. So congratulations to the C's. Definitely earned a fantastic finals against a good team in the Dallas Mavericks. I think the Mavericks ended up being a bad matchup. Well, you guys understand. You guys understand what I'm trying to say there, but still, I think that it was just very impressive how the Celtics were able to pretty much dismantle them. They kind of just gave away a game in Game 4, but for the most part, I thought the Celtics pretty much controlled, every game in the series outside of their loss. But what were your kind of main takeaways, Lee?
Yeah, obviously all the things you guys said, but I thought the most interesting thing was that so many things still hold true about how this season went for this team, how this season went for the league, and that it's still true. And, shout out to the Celtics for what they're able to accomplish here. It's still true that they had maybe arguably the easiest road to the finals. But I think what also holds true is that this team probably still would have destroyed any really good teams in the East. Like
Hmm.
the way that they've pretty much, dismantled this Dallas Mavericks team, which is an amazing team. Like
Right.
losing in the way that you do against this Celtics team doesn't feel like the Mavericks had a really strong team, but this was an incredible team going into the postseason, going through the first few rounds there, and the way the Celtics just didn't care at all and were still able to take care of business pretty handily. It just goes to show that while they did have luck on their side in a lot of ways, while they did have health on their side for most of the playoffs, I don't think those things would have mattered given that they have almost no flaws 1 through 6 on their roster. And so when you just have no one you can sell out on a team, it is very difficult to create defensive schemes. And when you have honestly no one to pick on the defensive side, it's really hard to score points. As you can see, the Mavericks, one of the better offensive teams in the league. They have two of the best offensive scorers on their team, and it just was not enough to get over the hump of a team that honestly didn't, outscore them in a crazy way. I think the Celtics averaged like 103 across the series. Like that's not a indomitable offense there, but when you can't score more than 80 points across the series, it just makes things difficult. And that is pretty much the name of the game from this series is that the Celtics made everything difficult for the Mavs and they made things even easier for themselves. And so shout out to Joe Mazzulla, shout out to the guys on this team for, putting together what was maybe one of the most impressive seasons we've seen in a while, despite the lack of credit they may receive moving forward. Micah, what were your thoughts on the series and on these two individual teams?
Yeah, I thought overall it was a fun series. I think even though it was, you look at 5 games and the outcomes were often kind of lopsided, there was still between each game, to me at least, it felt like good discussions about adjustments. I feel like both coaching staffs were throwing out a lot of different things to attack the other end of the court, to try and throw off the opponent. So to me, even though kind of a lopsided outcome, I still really enjoyed this finals. I've seen a lot of people online and stuff saying like they hated these finals, and I think that's more about like how you feel about maybe the NBA as a product or something, because this was still high level basketball, and it sounds like we all agree that Boston Celtics are just an incredibly good team. We can get into the historic context later. I think that would be kind of fun to talk about where we think they would rank amongst all-time teams, but within this season, no one was as close to as dominant as them. So all the credit to them. Anytime a season ends, I always kind of do like an internal stock up, stock down after the finals, just trying to think about like how my perception of different players or coaches has changed. And I'd like to hear that from you guys too. Who coming out of this finals are you higher on, are you lower on? For me, stock up first with a bullet is probably Jaylen Brown. Incredible active defense on Luka the entire series. Understood how important his drives were, leveraged that to get good looks for teammates. Just thought he was solid, super high basketball IQ throughout the whole thing. Made the right play almost every time. And the jokes before, can't go left, all the different stuff. He definitely has worked on his game and stepped up in a huge moment. So stock up for him for sure. For me, Missoula is another one.
Oh yeah.
There were discussions of like, how much is this really him versus kind of what Udoka had already set up or what these veterans were doing. But I think this playoff run really showed he's a high level coach. I want to give a shout out to my friend Jacob, who disagrees with me. He's a big Celtics fan. He was saying it was basically Drew Holiday and Al Horford coaching the team. So your mileage may vary on how much you like Missoula, but I do think he did a really good job. Stock down, I mostly have Mavericks, which is, as you would guess, is kind of the losing team. Tim Hardaway, I feel like he just
boy.
struggled. You just when you're a specialist and you're not fulfilling your specialty, you're not hitting shots like that. That's going to be tough. So don't want to overreact, but he is about to be on the last year of his deal, making about $16 million. So definitely a trade name to watch there. Lino, I'll throw it to you first on this one. Coming out of this series, who are some guys you're higher or lower on these teams?
Kristaps Porzingis, his impact was something I just couldn't expect given the history of just his role on teams. We kind of saw early on in his career that him as a number one guy just isn't going to work. We thought putting him besides Luka was going to be, a game changer for his career, and that didn't work. And at a certain point, I just kind of gave up on the unicorn experience there. I was like, I just don't think this guy has what it takes to be a winning player. And I was wrong. He was so impactful. He practically nullified all of the wings and the centers for the Mavericks and their attempts to get to the rim, to score, to rebound. He just took away all of that across the series. And it was just very impressive that he's kind of been able to find a position and a fit that works for him. And it just goes to show how much fit matters. And it helps when you play with five other incredible basketball players who could easily be 1 through 3 on their own individual teams. But at the same time, his impact can't go understated in that he just really mattered for this playoff run. So shout out to KP. What about you, Caelan?
Um, I think I've really fallen in love with Drew Holiday. A guy that I'm sure has a high approval rating, but he really makes me wonder. I'm not saying he's better than Damian Lillard, but he's the way he plays. I mean, how could you not want him on your championship team over a
Yeah.
guy like Dame? I don't know. It's tough. I'm just thinking about that trade, and I'm also thinking about a guy like Tatum. I was really excited to talk about this guy. It's like I can just go into it right now. He had a really polarizing finals, I'll say. Um, some of the discourse after the first two games was pretty tough, maybe deservedly so. I think I gave him some crap as well. But, in hindsight, looking at the totality of his finals, I think Tatum played pretty well. And I think he even deserved like real consideration for finals MVP. I think I would have gave him finals MVP. It's kind of tough because those first two games were pretty rough. But I think why I'm a little higher on Tatum's performance in the finals is because he was not super efficient in his jump shooting. We all understand that. That's really the only knock. And I understand how important it is as the lead guy to knock down shots. They were fortunate to have other guys step up in that regard. But I think that when he's still giving you all the defense and the rebounding and the leadership and he's doing the floor general stuff, all of his numbers outside of it was just really his jump shooting efficiency. And even when you go back and watch the games, a lot of the shots that he took, he wasn't missing shots that he was supposed to make. He really wasn't. When he got good looks, when he got a clean pull-up three off a screen, he was drilling them at a efficient clip. He was missing like those ridiculous shots that he probably shouldn't be taking. But it is what it is. Tatum has never had the best shot selection. He's a Kobe guy. He fancies himself a tough shot maker. He takes a lot of tough shots. I'm not sure if he's as good at making those tough shots as he thinks he is. He's not Jamal Murray in that regard. Certainly not. But I still think he played a pretty good series. I think the role that he played was important. Like it was still a stabilizing force, even though he wasn't giving you the efficiency in the jump shooting. The defense was playing so well, and the other guys stepped up. It didn't really hurt them in a way. And I just feel like I'm still high. I'm not any lower on Tatum after this finals. I don't think it was a bad finals. I don't think it's something like, we got to watch next year if he gets deep into. Is he going to perform? Of course he's going to perform. I thought he was pretty strong in this finals. He just wasn't efficient in knocking down some of those tougher looks. But Micah,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Lynn. Go ahead.
I was just going to say so much about Tatum is just the fact that people don't like him. Like he's just not cool to a lot of people, but otherwise he's just an incredible basketball player, slightly inefficient, has his moments where he ideally would have stepped up, but he's always stepped up in some way. He's never been, just completely absent on the floor in the way some superstars are. If their shot's not falling, they mean nothing to their team. And so, yeah, I think Tatum gets bad rap. And right now, there's just been rounds and rounds of people making fun of him for, achieving the pinnacle of his career and not being cool enough about it. But it's unfortunate because I think he is an incredible basketball player who probably gets a bit more slack, but at the same time, he's a bajillionaire with lots of money, lots of fame, and has a title and plays for one of the best teams ever. So I don't feel that bad for him, but I think the conversation about
Fair
him has
enough.
kind of steered in the wrong direction. What about you, Micah? Thoughts on Tatum?
It's tough for me because on one hand, Caelan, I agree with you. He's able to impact the game in so many other ways other than his scoring. But at the same time, I think almost any other number one option on a contending team being unable to score that much through the first 4 games probably would have meant their team would lose. And I think that's the Tatum discussion is his surrounding talent is so tremendous that it's hard to evaluate him. That's why Twitter makes the role player jokes, right? It's like he doesn't have to show up offensively every single night from a scoring perspective because other guys can step up. But we've also seen prior to this star-studded supporting cast being around him, they did come up short. They were young, but every single time, they have not reached a championship before. Championships are hard to get. Great players don't achieve that. That's not a total indictment on him, but it's just something I've been thinking about because I was looking back at our top 10 player rankings that we did, and I think we had Tatum like 7th or 8th or something behind guys like Kawhi, LeBron, Embiid, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And in my mind, I'm not sure, given this finals run, if I would move him ahead of any of those guys. I wondered how you guys felt about that, about Tatum as he ranks amongst the top guys in the rest of the league, if this playoff run changes any of that for you, Caelan. I'll throw it to you first on that.
No, I think he's still like a 7, 8-ish overall player. I think he's still about, the same place. If anything, it's Jaylen Brown taking a step up that makes them, as dominant as they are. But who knows? I think Tatum still has a little room to grow. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 3 player in the league, but I think he can get a little better. Maybe like a consensus top 5-ish player, top 6-ish player. What about you, Lane? What are you thinking?
Yeah, he doesn't really move for me either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he definitely wouldn't move up, which is kind of strange. You win a championship that should raise your stock significantly in the grand scheme of NBA history, but for me, it's all kind of nullified by having and just a team that did all the things they needed to do so that you could take a few nights off and not really feel any kind of pressure or heat from it. So I still think he's as talented as we thought he was. I just with this kind of team, it just won't ever matter. Like you can play incredibly, but if you still have a team like this, it's just going to be like, well, you had 3 guys averaging 15 to 20 points. Really 4 guys like that, and how can you lose a game like that? And so it's difficult, but I think it's all the best he can hope for right now until he goes and like wins one by himself.
Can we can we pivot to Luca real quick before we move off of this little stock thing? I'm looking at Luca Doncic, and I'm hearing some of the discourse around him. Mainly, it's about his defense in this finals. Right? This was kind of an unlucky matchup for the Mavs. It truly was. This is probably the last team, the last type of team you'd want to play. Um, Particularly in the fact that they just want the mismatch every time up and down the court. They just want a mismatch hunt. Everyone doesn't play like that. It seems like the most obvious way to play. Why would you play any other way? But maybe everyone doesn't have the perfect player to attack that matchup. But the Celtics did. They had multiple guys to attack that. But what I want to say about Luka is that I don't think he needs to change his game to win a championship. First of all, if he played his entire career and never won a ring, maybe it would suck, but it wouldn't mean that he's playing the wrong way. The way he plays is fine. He doesn't need to be a fantastic defender. The Mavs are gonna, have to go back to the drawing board. Not starting from scratch, but they have to kind of understand. Is this the perfect team to win a championship? How can we kind of tweak this thing? But I think the discourse about his defense was overblown. Like I really like when they were talking about what was it, blow by percentage? What is that? I just don't care about that. That's not a real stat. I never heard anybody talk about blow by percentage. I don't care about that stuff. And then it was overdone the other way when the Mavs won the game 4, and people said, "Well, you have to give Luka credit for it." No, he didn't. What defense? He just went from terrible to kind of okay. Like he's trying. So like if he's trying the way Steph does, Steph is like the ultimate example for a star player who has a offensive load, who is not a great defender. Just tries his ass off. A lot of guys are afraid to look stupid. I think Steph looks dumb sometimes. So he's just trying so hard. Sometimes it doesn't work out for him. He doesn't care. He just does what it takes. I think if Luka just gave it a little more effort, he's going to learn from this. He's going to learn from this. He'll be better. I don't think he needs to change the way he plays. I don't think he is it's too Luka centric. Lean, I want to get your opinion on just kind of what I was saying there, and then you can even go into just the Mavs like roster as a whole in terms of how likely are they to come back next year, if you think they need to make tweaks or anything. Just talk about the Mavs a little bit.
I'd have to disagree for the most part. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the arguments around Luka's defense are spot on, in the sense that what I noticed most was that even beyond his effort, and I did notice a step up in effort between the first few games and then game 4, it almost still didn't matter. I think at the end of game 3, he stepped up his effort, but I think he sucks at defense. I think he doesn't know what he's doing beyond the physical skills. I think he makes a lot of poor decisions on defense, and that's not just an effort thing. That's like a knowing what you're doing thing. So I do think he needs to go back to the drawing board and figure out what the right thing to do on defense is. Because Steph, for his credit, he knows what he's supposed to do on defense, and he
Mhm.
tries to do that, and sometimes that doesn't work out because of his physical limits. But with Luka, you can just see him out there, and he makes a lot of boneheaded Karl Anthony Towns like defensive decisions. And it's like, why did you do that? Why are you trying to take a charge with 5 fouls? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. But in your head, you think this is what trying hard looks like. Put my
Yeah.
body on the line. Like, no, do something smarter than that. Apply the incredible basketball IQ that you have on the offensive end to the defensive end. So many plays have been pointed out where he's just like pointing in a random direction to a teammate as or an offensive player blows by him
Mhm.
because he's trying to pretend to be engaged on defense. Like I think from the eye test you can tell the difference between someone who's engaged and someone who's trying to be engaged because of the narrative around his defense. Like he has to go and take a serious focus on the defensive end because he's not limited physically. He may be tired, and I can give him credit for that given the offensive load that he has, but he's out there and he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. And that cost them a lot of games in this series. And so if he really, really wants to win at that level, that's something he's just going to have to figure out, which I think he can. I think he has the skill set, the talent, the intelligence to do so. It just wasn't available here against the Celtics when it really mattered the most. As far as the team in general, I just feel like they can make a few moves, a few guys who I think are just going to get better. I think PJ, Derek Lively, Gafford, these are guys who, they went from crazy situations to being in the NBA finals. And I think you learned so much from this experience. And I think they're going to come back incredible players next season. And those are really good tools you have. There's other players who, probably shouldn't be on this team next season. Tim Hardaway Jr. being one of them. I think some shooting, if you can bring it in from anywhere, I'm not sure where you'd get it, that would be important. And I'm not sure what their draft situation looks like this year, but if they can win in the draft again, then that would be huge just for filling in that gap.
Well,
Mike, go ahead.
Micah, what'd you think about Kyrie Irving? What'd you think about his performance?
It was tough. It was really tough to watch. The Mavericks or the Dallas the Dallas games he played well. This is a very tough matchup. I think my biggest takeaway, like if we want to talk about Boston historically, I would lean their defense is more historic than their offense to me.
Mm-hmm.
and they just
Oh yeah,
have so much talent on the perimeter. Like, you have Derek White on you have Drew Holiday on you, and you
yeah.
get a switch, and it's Jaylen Brown or it's Jason Tatum. Like, it's insane. And then you still have rim protection behind that. And Al Horford is like still somehow a pretty good switch
Somehow,
defender.
dude.
Like, it's incredible. So yeah, for Kyrie, it was tough to watch, especially with how awesome he was in the Minnesota series. You know, we talked about previewing that. Like, he had to be huge, and he stepped up in a massive way. So I wish he could have done that more in this series, because I think we would have had a closer series because of it. But I didn't see anything that I was like, oh, that's bad process. That's the wrong decision. Like, he takes tough shots. He's a tough shot maker. Like, we're not about to be like, oh, take less middies, Kyrie. Like that, that's his game. So I just wish there was a way they could get him freed up a little more. And I think that kind of segues me into the Dallas roster questions.
Yeah.
And I think they just need two-way shooting. Like, that's not easy to find, but they need their Kentavious Caldwell Pope. They need their Drew Holiday. They need this guy that is dangerous enough to where when Luka and Kyrie drive, there's not three bodies in the paint. I think Kyrie set in stone, Luka set in stone, Lively set in stone. Those other two spots are what they're going to need to figure out. I was texting our friend Jaron. KCP is a free agent. Maybe they could literally get KCP on a short-term deal. I think he'd be a great fit. Trading for somebody like Jeremy Grant, like not as much shooting, but some shooting, and give you more athleticism on the perimeter. And even someone like Klay Thompson, the defense has slipped, but he still would be a solid defender and is still a knockdown shooter. Like, I was actually surprised looking at his numbers today, how good he was offensively last year. He can still shoot the rock, spoiler alert. So I think pursuing more two-way shooting talent is what they need to do. And that's tough. I mean, every LeBron build is based around that. It's not easy to find those guys, but when you have someone like Luka, I think you have to make that a very vital thing to try and accomplish.
Can I give you my hot take? This is my hot take right here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyrie is the problem. I think Kyrie is the limiting factor. And I think if you're going to build a championship team, it's going to be very difficult to do it this way. Earlier, I said that I didn't think Luka Doncic's defense was a problem. I don't think it is. He's that nice. Okay, nobody thinks Jokic's defense is a problem, and he got cooked by Anthony Davis every game. Okay, so I think Luka's fine. He's really that caliber of player, but you got to have I talked about this in an earlier pod about how Denver, how the Nuggets, when they built their championship team, they wanted everybody to be plugging a certain hole, doing something different, right? So that everything was accounted for. And that's kind of the opposite of what Luka and Kyrie are. Like, they don't account for each other. No, well, I did want to get y'all's opinion on like the team building aspect of having your star player, be a defensive liability and also be a jump shooter. With Kyrie is like, Kyrie doesn't get to the rim really. He doesn't put pressure on the rim. He doesn't go to the free throw line. Right? Like, he's just another ball handling jump shooter. So
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. Honestly, I feel like it's hard to say that because it worked until it didn't. Like, they got all the way to the finals. The one team they couldn't beat is the one team nobody else could beat at all. And so it's like it's hard to like. I feel like some of that's a bit of recency bias in the sense that like we've seen that Luka and Kyrie work super well together when it works, but at the same time, when you now have to go into the season, everybody's got to be like, how do we beat Boston? The moves that you make probably means you have some better defense on the floor at the 2 and 3 spot, a little bit more switchability, and maybe somebody who can get to the free throw line a little bit more than Kyrie does. But ultimately, I personally wouldn't make that move this season, and I wouldn't be too fast to move Kyrie, as you were right there. And so I feel like changing that dynamic between Kyrie and Luka is a very, very dramatic change to have for a team that was 3 wins away from a championship.
Yeah,
But what
that's
about
well
you, Michael?
said. Yeah, that makes sense. I think these kind of conversations are important to have because Caelan, I agree with you conceptually. Like, it's not an ideal fit, but I also think, and we'll actually kind of get into this some with our draft coverage because I kind of feel this way about some of these prospects. But it's like with team building, sometimes you just have to focus on what your best players do well and try and insulate that as best as possible. Because, like, if there was a Kyrie for Drew trade available, which obviously there's not, like, yeah, I think the Mavericks should consider that because now you're kind of getting some of what Boston has with versatile elite defense with some shot making around Luka. But I don't think that's out there. So as far as acting on it, I don't think there's anything to do. But I think you bring up good points that it's not a perfect fit and more rim pressure would be nice to have.
Well, I just want to say that this team did not have the same success with Kyrie, but the Celtics had Kyrie and they moved off of him. Like
Mhm.
you like would you consider this offseason that the Celtics had to be like dramatic change? Like, and I know that the decisions are like, oh, we can add Kristaps, sure. Why not add Kristaps for Marcus Smart? And oh, we can move Brogdon and bring in Drew Holiday. Sure, like some of the moves are more obvious. I get it, but uh, I'm just saying that a lot of times, to win a championship, like you do have to like be bold, and you have to have vision, and you have to be able to say, yeah, we were good this way, but are we limited? Like, yeah, we made it to the finals this season, but the Nuggets last year were better than we were this year. They won the finals and couldn't get back. Right? It's so difficult. So I I think that I think that it might be foolish to think that the Mavs got to the finals this year. Let's just reload and maybe change one little piece here, and then we have a good chance to get back. I might disagree with that. I think that if this team is not like in a smarter place next season with their roster, I don't think they have a great chance of getting back to the NBA Finals. I really don't.
That's fair.
That's definitely fair. I wanted to ask you guys kind of related to that, about how likely Boston is to get back to the NBA Finals next year. So, first question is, let's say somebody's like, "Hey, here's a $500,000 DraftKings like credit, but you don't win anything if you lose the bet, but you make $1 million if you win it." Are you taking Boston or the field in the East to make the finals next year?
Dude, if the Sixers get Paul George, I might have to be all in on the Sixers next season.
Wow.
First of all, how dare you?
Get him, Micah. Get him.
Like Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, hopefully healthy, and Paul George. This sounds like the perfect answer against the Boston Celtics. I
Yeah,
just would definitely take them over the Celtics if that existed. Who knows
I
if that
can't. I
exists?
can't think
Otherwise, I
of a.
think the Celtics are making it back. I
I
think the
can't think
Celtics
of
are
a
definitely going
faster
to be back.
way to light $500,000 on fire than to bet on Joel Embiid.
it's fair.
Just torture, bro. It's the same thing, bro. Just light a match. No, I
Hey,
think
man.
I think that the Celtics are a good bet, but this is the thing. I think so much about getting back to the finals is about like mentality of the players on the court. Like the Nuggets were up 20 in game 7. Like they really should have won. Like I can make the argument that they were probably like the best team in the West and that they could have gotten back and they would have most likely been a better challenge to Boston. But that's it didn't feel like these are the players headed for a dynasty. It does like Jokic doesn't feel like that kind of guy. Like I think about the Kobe Shaq Lakers that went to 4 championships in 5 years. Like we all understand that like Kobe is maniacal in the way he works and competes and Shaq was, come playoff time, Shaq was as dominant and as serious as a player could be. Phil Jack, like so, like that kind of felt like the makeup of a team that maybe could. I question the mental makeup of this team. Do they feel like a dynasty? I don't think so. I don't think this is. I think that they could potentially get another ring, but it won't be next year for sure. They'll probably retool and come back years later. But I
Mhm.
don't see them getting back because of their mentality. not because of like the roster. Like it's still going to be the same incredible team, but
Yeah,
I think maybe Miami could be more hungry, or somebody else could be more hungry, but not Philly
that's
because no Philly. So.
Yeah,
that's
once we
fair.
get Zach Edey on the floor, it's going to be a big game changer for us. Zach Edey's going to take us to the promised land. I did want to ask you though, Caelan, did you feel that way as far as that dynastic mentality? Did you feel like the Warriors had that same mentality that we might prescribe to a LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Kobe, Shaq situation?
Yeah, I think the Warriors, like when they were on their run, I think that like we have to credit the system. Like they were a machine in how they operated,
Mhm.
both on the court and in the front office, and then the professionalism that is Steph and Clay, combined with the energy that it is Draymond. I think
Yeah,
they did kind of have that makeup. I think it makes sense
I
that they
see. I see.
repeated.
Yeah, I think I definitely get what you're saying. I do think some people would push back and say Boston might be better mentally after this because it felt like as a team, they always felt like when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, when are we going to blow this lead? How are we going to come up short? And sometimes we do see defending champions go on huge runs. 2016 Warriors, they came up short in the finals, but had the most successful season ever defending, in the regular season, defending their ring. So there's situations like that I do wonder if it'll almost be a weight off of like Tatum and Brown's shoulders.
I
And
thought
they
that
might be able
until
to play more
Milwaukee laid an
basic.
egg after they won the finals. Like Milwaukee had been there, done it before, and they still against y'all. It looked like they were terrified, particularly Giannis late in the fourth. And so I was confident in that type of thinking, and then I saw what Milwaukee did. Well, maybe winning a title doesn't guarantee you a certain level of confidence in the playoffs moving forward. Like it's on the
Honestly, that's a good point because I think my other argument would be that it is crazy difficult to win two in a row, let alone like go on a huge run like most dynasties do. Like, well, looking at that Nuggets team, just off the sheer effort and mentality it takes to go from an 82 game season, stack on another four series on that, an Olympic summer, and then you go straight into another season and try to do it all over again. I could tell, from the beginning that that was going to be difficult for the Nuggets, and they started to slow down as the postseason began. And I'm not sure as the Celtics team is not filled with the youngest players in the world. Like KP's great, but I don't, and he didn't have to
very
play a ton of games this season. But
right.
Al Horford is literally made of dust. I don't understand how he's still standing. But asking him to come back and do that again feels crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But they have young guys in Tatum and Brown and White and Drew Holiday, and so maybe those guys can really carry them throughout the season. But it's just crazy difficult. So I don't think it's a slight for them to not be able to do it. Um,
Not at
I
all. Not
It
at all.
takes a crazy amount to get that done. So
Mm-hmm.
I would bet the field because it's just that difficult. And you never know what kind of season another team who's had all this time off is going to have, like the Miami Heat or unfortunately the Philadelphia 76ers. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm surprised by you guys' answers. I really am. My original question was going to be Boston versus the field for the title, but I thought that would be, too easy because I agree. I think you just have to take the field because it's too easy to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
But a team hasn't dominated the East like this since like the late stage LeBron Cavs. And
Mm,
they had an injured, path to the finals, but they were also supremely dominant in the regular season. So yeah, it might have been 6 games versus a healthy Miami, or maybe 7 games versus a healthy Knicks team, but they were so dominant. I think I would take them over the
mm.
field in the East. So we disagree there, but I think, like you guys are saying, it just speaks to how hard it is to make these kind of runs. But Boston, like you guys were saying, they're healthy for the most part. They're young, and we saw this playoffs that they can lose a starter and win the East. Like no other team has that advantage.
Real quick, Micah, I think the number one team next season to knock these boys off is going to be Milwaukee. I said like right when this happened that, or right when the Dame trade happened, that I thought that year two would be better for Milwaukee because you just need that second year to really build that roster out. And you guys know this. That first year you got LeBron the roster was not awesome. Okay, like you had the three guys, and then whatever you could kind of just get like on the fly, you had to just get. Once you have a full season and trade deadline, and then an off season to kind of retool the roster, you can get pieces that fit more. And I think that they'll be better to have a full season of Doc Rivers. I don't know if you guys heard Doc say that Dame came in out of shape. That was wild to say that about your own guy, but I think that because Giannis is clearly better than Tatum, he is a force. I think that don't count out the Milwaukee Bucks next season. I think that they'll be a better team.
That's fair. Yeah. Although Drew Holiday in that matchup versus Dame, like y'all remember that Blazers Pelicans series that was a sweep. I think we'd be having flashbacks of Dame in prison if Drew had a whole like you traded me for this series. Now Giannis, on the other hand, I don't know who Milwaukee would put on Giannis. I guess
nobody.
Tatum, but I hope we get to see that matchup because the last time they played it went 7 games, but Middleton was out, so we didn't really get like the full matchup. So yeah, hopefully we see that.
Drew
Hopefully
did just put Kyrie Irving in jail, so I guess he would put Damian Lillard in.
Drew is special. Drew is a special player. My goodness, that dude is so good. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on the finals you want to hit on? Anything else you think was kind of interesting coming away from this one?
That's all I got.
Cool.
No, just shout out Brad Stevens, who probably one of the smartest basketball minds. I think whenever he's old, like we'll look back and he'll be like Jerry West. He didn't play, but in terms of just coaching and now building teams, like he'll be like considered like one of the smartest basketball minds to like ever grace this league. So really cool. Shout out Brad Stevens, man.
Definitely. Yeah, the true finals MVP, as Tim Legler put it. I mean, that
to be honest.
That roster is insane. And yeah, just hats off to him for sure. So yeah, congratulations to the 2024 Boston Celtics championship.
Congratulations to the in-season tournament champions too. The Los Angeles people forget about that so long ago. The Lakers also won a trophy. It didn't feel like it.
It's one banner to one banner. I don't. They're really no.
I'm saying.
Also, Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP. I don't know if we said that, but
we did it.
That's kind of interesting, I guess. It was close. Drew, Tatum, or Brown could have won it. So, congrats.
I thought it would have been cool if they gave Tatum and Brown like a code thing. That would have been cool just for like narrative storyline stuff. That
would have been hilarious. So, all right. Well, the 2024 season is over. The next big thing on the NBA calendar is the draft. So we will definitely be shifting more into draft coverage. If you listen to the last episode, we covered a couple of prospects, Alex Sarr and Nikola Topic. So we're going to cover a few more today. I will give a shorter version of my preamble, which we are not draft people. We just want to give our listeners an idea of who to look out for in this draft and kind of what archetypes we're dealing with. So we will point you guys into some good recommendations for deep dives like we did, but we have not been watching high school film of these guys. So just want to reiterate that again. But to start with, we're going to start with another lanky young man from France who sounds like we might have back-to-back number 1 picks with lanky young men from France, and that is Zaccharie Risacher, one of the best names in the draft, certainly.
Yeah, no question. Good pronunciation too, Micah.
Thank you. He's a 6'9", 200-pound forward with a 6'11" wingspan. When you think of this guy, I think he definitely embodies a forward 3-and-D archetype. He can shoot it. He's got a good-looking stroke. He's got good defensive intangibles, especially off ball. Good activity. Like I said, 6'11" wingspan, so a lot of length. He's pretty skinny right now, but has a frame that I think he could probably fill out. His upside will be determined by his off the dribble juice, how much he's able to put pressure on the rim, playmaking. He definitely showed some flashes, but he was not exactly running a ton of pick and rolls. He was mostly spotted up in the corner, attacking some closeouts. And I think as we kind of dig into who Risacher is as a prospect, we'll kind of discover that this draft class, it'll be positional size, I feel like will be a trend. And that's kind of why we picked the 3 prospects we'll cover today, because their size really impacts where they will be drafted. So, Lino, I wanted to throw it to you. What did you see watching some tape of Risacher?
Yeah, I think this is a very high value draft prospect in the sense it's something that every team is going to need forever and always. And that size at the wing, someone who can be a 3 point specialist and a high level defender. And Riza Shea comes in with really high upside on both of those ends. He started off kind of rough this season. I think he started this first half of the season shooting like 30% and then finished the season at like 40% from three. And so he's really stepped up there. I think fixed a few things in his shot and has seen a lot more consistency there. His defensive upside is phenomenal. I think he'll be able to guard at least 3, maybe 4 different positions on the floor as a point of attack defender, but also as somewhat of a play disruptor and maybe less rim protection given his lack in strength and weight. But I think the skills to get vertical and his verticality in general are going to lend himself to be able to improve on that side of the game. Some of the things I've seen from him that are kind of concerning, his ability to create besides shooting and play finishing isn't always there. I'm not exactly sure how well he's going to do with that with an NBA level defense, but I do think the shooting he has is going to open up the floor for him and continue to do so. I think some of the comps I kind of feel towards him is like, and Michael Porter Jr. is a big one. He might not be as good of a defender as MPJ is, but if he can get there or better, he's just going to have a job in the NBA for a very long time. I think DJJ is also another comp that I kind of see in him as, but better. Like I think that would be kind of a floor for him, but with his ability to finish plays above the rim as well as his ability to shoot the three, he would be a great asset to have besides a guy like Luka or a guy who can create a lot of offense and a lot of opportunities. He's going to finish those plays at a high efficiency rate. So, big fan of his game. I think size is going to be a big thing. He's definitely going to need to get in the gym to be able to deal with some of the larger players that he's going to end up being matched up against, especially as the league trends to get bigger and bigger. I mean, every year we have these 7 foot guys coming into the league. We have these really stocky wings and these really strong guards who are going to push you off of your spot. And so strength is going to be the name of the game, I think, moving forward with the league. And so that's something he can work on. But otherwise, I'm super excited to see what happens. Micah, where are you kind of feeling as far as comps, as far as projections, and the impact you think he's going to have in the league?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Obviously, you start with like 3 and D wings. Brian Schroeder, Brian J NBA on Twitter has a great big board he does through Patreon. His comps, one of them is Otto Porter, which I
Mm,
thought was interesting. You know, Otto Porter, if he's able to stay healthy, is like a very valuable NBA player. I saw some other ones, Trey Murphy the third, you know, long, lanky shooter with some solid defense. And then obviously being French and being tall, Nick Batum is another one that gets thrown around. And you can definitely see that in his game.
yeah.
Probably not the primary playmaking ability, but definitely has some connector kind of feel. So those are the guys that stand out the most to me. And I think it'll just be interesting to see how teams value him, because I think you could argue he has the highest floor in the draft. Like, I think there's almost no way whoever drafts him won't be giving him a second contract,
Hmm.
because he's just a solid 3 and D wing. Like, and that's super valuable when you're almost 6'10". You know, like that's like you said,
Yeah.
Michael Porter Jr. You know, I think defensively has a lot more upside than MPJ. Probably not the shooter, but we see how valuable MPJ is. I mean, he's making 30 million something a year, signed a massive contract off his rookie deal. You could definitely see that with Risa
Yeah.
Shea. So I think it's definitely worth a pick. What will be interesting to see is how teams value his floor versus other prospects' upside.
Mm.
So, Caelan, based off any of that, do you have any thoughts on kind of this archetype or this type of player, or just any thoughts on anything we said?
Yeah, what's the best version of him? What's like if he's like awesome? What does he look like?
Who, if he's awesome, like 6'10" Chris Middleton.
Mm,
Hmm.
Okay.
That's a max player.
Right.
And like
Right.
he'd have to get really good at a lot of things to do that.
But just the
But yeah, I'd
handle,
say.
I mean,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, the handle. I think. Well, yeah, I guess Middleton isn't that great of a passing playmaker.
Middleton's a
But yeah,
great like post scorer too. Like he can do some
mhm,
work in the mid post.
That's true. He can
yeah,
hurt mismatches really well. That's a good
Absolutely.
point. So
yeah.
yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, I think ceiling, big Middleton is
Okay.
something you could look at.
I like
But yeah,
that.
that's definitely the higher end outcome.
Yeah, I was just doing like some Googles that they said his pro comparison was Harrison Barnes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the
Yeah.
better version of Harrison Barnes.
Yeah. Which again, like
Ideally, a
solid
good bit
player. And
smarter.
this is a role player draft. Like there will be an
Mhm.
all-star that comes out of nowhere, but it's just something to keep in mind with these guys. Like getting Harrison Barnes, like rookie Harrison Barnes, like that was a
Yeah.
solid player,
No,
contributed to a championship
honestly,
team.
the longer we've been like looking at this draft, the more excited I've been about it because in other drafts, a lot of these guys are looking for their next star. And of course, all these lottery teams need that. But as far as teams like our teams and teams like a majority of the league that are, not in the top 10 worst teams in the league, we're looking for guys who can fit roles that we don't have to pay $1 billion to.
Yeah.
And this draft is full of those guys who are very, Caelan, you were talking about how the Nuggets build a championship team by plugging in players to a specific job. And
hmm
they're not the best player in every single way,
hmm
but they're really amazing at their job. And this
hmm
draft is full of guys like that. And
Okay.
so guys that are, amazing at one or two things that are important for winning, and they, are not the worst at other areas, but those are probably areas that they need to improve on. But at the same time, you're not going to expect them to be the best in those areas either. And
Right.
so this is a really fun draft for that because you kind of get to go shopping with a little bit more specificity in mind. Like, oh, we need shooters. There's 4 or 5 guys here that are averaging 40% from three, can defend decently, but they can't dribble the ball to save their life. Well, that's fine. We have 2 dribblers on our team already, so
hmm
like we can fill in those gaps. And so this is another example of that. And that I don't love this guy's ability to playmaking, passing. But he can shoot really well, he can defend really well, and he can defend 3 or 4 different positions. So I think he's going to be super valuable for whoever can pick him up.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, that's really well said, Lino. I think that really encapsulates this draft class to a T. So definitely want to clip that one for TikTok.
Turn on the TikTok camera.
Turn on the TikTok camera.
So, but yeah, that was great. And this next guy, if you guys are good to transition to, also kind of encapsulate that. So Reed Sheppard, Kentucky guard, 6'2", 190 with a 6'3" wingspan. So again, talking about positional size, this is the other end of that spectrum. Reed is small, but Reed is weird because he does some things super well.
Mhm.
Point like top of the list is 3-point shooting. Not a typo. 52% from three on 8 attempts a
Sheesh.
game.
Oh my God.
So 8 attempts a game. I mean, if you're shooting like that, you should be taking 10 or 12. But he takes them off the dribble, off screens. Obviously, the catch and shoot is like flawless. But he can do movement. He can do a lot of different stuff. And I think what would surprise people when you look at Reed Sheppard is he's a very active defender. He does not have a huge wingspan, but has some of the best hands in the entire draft. He averaged about 4 stocks a game with steals and blocks combined. Defensively, there's mistakes in there. He falls asleep off the ball, but if you watch enough Sheppard film, you will see him fall asleep off the ball, realize he fell asleep, and then turn around and block the shot that he just allowed at the rim. But
Mhm.
again, he's 6'2" with like barely a plus wingspan. So is he your point guard? Probably not. The playmaking isn't really there. He can do some passing, but there's not a lot of like live dribble reads happening. No skip passes really, and he missed some easy reads too. So he's going to be a really interesting team player for teams to evaluate because it's like I don't think this guy can be a primary creator, but he's also probably too small to be like a versatile defender, like someone like Jalen Suggs or something that you could put next to a creator. So
How's his ball
Lino,
handling?
solid, a good handle. I would say a practical handle. He can get to where he wants to go. He can leverage it. He's not breaking out any crazy crossovers or anything. That is
Not
one
great at
complaint.
creating space, I'd say.
Yeah, one complaint people have about him is he kind of needs a screen to get open.
Mm.
But that's also like 90% of the NBA. Like you're either attacking a mismatch or using a screen.
So he's a 6'3" off guard.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's like, how many of those are there that are effective? But he's so good at what he's good at, you can kind of talk yourself into like, well, maybe he can, be a one of one kind of deal. So, Lino, what did you see with Reed Sheppard?
Yeah, I think, weird is a great way to describe him because I feel very weird about his prospect in the NBA. For all the reasons you mentioned, I don't think it's weird that you need a screen to, score, but I do think it's weird that you're going to have to play as an off guard and an off ball guard, but you also don't cut or like do a lot of off ball things except be open in the corner and shoot. I think I was reading this one article today and said last season he did not record a single field goal cutting to the basket.
Oh
Oh,
my!
wow.
I was like, that's crazy.
Which, to be
And
fair,
so,
like he should be outside of that arc if he's not on the ball. Because good
yeah,
Lord.
because he's 6'2". But like those are things that are really important in that role, and I'm curious as to how he plans to fill in that gap defensively. And no, just to stay on offense a bit, the shot making is incredible. The shooting anybody could use. Like it doesn't matter if you're 6'3", if you're going to make every open shot you get. So that's going to be huge for a team. Defensively, I do love his anticipation, and I think that accounts for all the stocks that he gets. I don't love it in the context of the NBA because I do feel, in my opinion, I feel that a lot of that comes from playing in college basketball, where he might not be getting targeted as much. He might not be as so that undersized aspect of his game may not be as emphasized given that the average height in the NCAA might be lower than the NBA and the skill level is obviously lower. And so he's able to use some of the downtime in which he can fall asleep to compensate for that. Whereas I don't think that's going to be available to him in the NBA. I think he's going to get targeted in the pick and roll often. I think he is also, if you fall asleep on a guy like when you're sharing the floor with a guy like Luka, like he's going to tear you to bits. Like these things are going to happen that he really won't be able to slack up on. And I don't really love event event creators on the defensive end, anticipators who, jump a lot of passing lanes. That's like a fun skill to me to have, but at the sacrifice of genuine, traditional, great defense, it is hard to stomach because he sells out on a lot of things and a lot of plays end up, going to the guy that he sold off of to try to dig for a steal, and that guy makes an open three. Those things concern me, especially on the NBA level. I just don't know that he's going to be able to get away with those kind of things. One of the comps that I hope for him is like, and this isn't a perfect comp, but it just, while I was watching, I was like, this reminds me of Jose Alvarado, who I think is a much better defender than Reed Sheppard will ever be. But as far as that event creation on the defensive end, as far as jumping passing lanes, getting steals, getting digs against larger players, Alvarado is incredible at those kind of things. And so if Reed Sheppard can carve out a role like that, that's going to be huge for him, especially at his size. But I think it's going to require a little bit more mental discipline on the defensive end to make that kind of thing happen.
Dude, one thing I think about when we're talking about lethal shooters, I think about a guy like JJ Redick, who is more than just a talented shooter. He like truly understood like the art of shooting, the art of movement on an NBA court, where to be,
Mhm.
just all the little things that can give you that little extra inch of space that an elite shooter needs to, really be effective. I'm thinking. I have no idea. Obviously, if you didn't catch the last episode, this is the weakest part of my NBA knowledge. Is like draft prospects, but if he's a smart NBA player, I think that with a jumper like that in this league, like there's no way he won't be able to find a role on a team. Particularly, if he goes to a team with a coach that knows how to use him. Just like looking,
Mhm.
just looking stuff up. They were saying like, pairing him next to a big guard like Amin Thompson would be solid. Somebody who obviously needs the space. They have a smart coach in Ime Udoka over there in Houston. So a situation like that, I think he could definitely, be effective. Even though he has some deficiencies that I don't like. Whenever we were talking about, we did an episode. We were talking about it was our rookie report episode, and we talked about not Amin Thompson. Scoot Henderson. We talked about Scoot Henderson, and I was making a point that I thought small guards should almost be like running backs in the NFL. You just don't draft them high. Like you don't draft a small guard before whatever 5 or 6 or whatever. So I am a little I have a little trepidation about just the size and a guy that small typically is gonna be your point guard. So it's gonna be a specific fit for him, it seems like. But not impossible for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And like I alluded to earlier in the episode, I think a lot of this draft class will be a lot of what team building is now in the new CBA, which is how to emphasize the positive aspects of players.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at Reed, like, yes, there are some deficiencies, but the things he's good at, if you focus on those, look for ways to emphasize those, if they're a good fit with your team, then I think he could be very valuable. Right now, let me pull the website just so I give them the right credit. There's this cool website that does like consensus. It's NBA mock draft database.com. So they pull like over 70 experts, big boards. So you get like a consensus of where they think people will go. Reed is mocked number 3 overall most
Mm-hmm.
consistently. And now you think like top 3 pick, like that's, that's a lot of like all NBA guys, but it's a role player draft. So something to keep in mind. But that would be Houston. And the most common comp you see for Reed Sheppard is Fred VanVleet, which is somebody that, is kind of a combo guard. He can play on ball, play off ball, very pesky defensively, doesn't have a ton of juice as far as getting to the basket, never been a great finisher, which Reed actually, he's a pretty good finisher, but I don't know how often he'll be able to get there against, NBA help defense. And then also like a very good 3-point shooter, the same way Reed is. So that's an interesting comp. I think Houston would be a good fit. There wouldn't be a rush. He could kind of learn under Fred VanVleet and then hopefully take over in the future and provide much needed spacing for guys like Amin Thompson and Jalen Green and players like that. Şengün, obviously. So I don't mind that fit at all. I also Hoop Intellect had Dante DiVincenzo as a comp,
Mhm.
which
Yeah,
coming
I've
off
seen
this
that.
year, that's a big compliment because Dante was like a top 5 shooter in the NBA this season. So if he could do some facsimile of that, like not a lot of on ball stuff, but just getting up threes at an insane clip. I think that'll be something in the NBA he really needs to do is get up triples. Like he
Mm-hmm.
cannot hesitate because that's where all his value, or at least will start with. Then maybe he can attack closeouts, but
Mm-hmm.
he needs to show a Caitlin Clark level of I'm gonna get these up. Like you're gonna have to deal with it. So I would definitely like to see that from Reed. Lino, do you have any thoughts on Reed Sheppard? Or are you ready to move to your favorite player in the draft?
I think I'm ready to move on, brother. Are you guys ready?
I'm not ready. I'm excited, but I'm not ready. So our final prospect we'll be covering this episode, and again, to keep with this trend of size, this is a large man. Even for the largest position in the NBA, he has a great positional size, and that is Zach Edey. Everyone listening to this podcast probably knows who Zach Edey is because he was one of the most successful college basketball players of all time. If you don't know, he is a senior from Purdue. I really just take a second to listen to these measurables. He is 7'4", 300 pounds with a 7'11" wingspan.
Oh my.
So 300 pounds with almost an 8-foot wingspan, a massive human being, historically dominant at the college level. He averaged 28, 14, almost 3 stocks a game. Very, very big man, very productive college player. Lino, you are certainly higher on him than I am, so I want you to take it away. What do you see when you watch Zach Edey?
The league's making a mistake. I'm talking to you, top 10 lottery pick teams, especially you, top 3. I know a lot of you guys feel like There's better talent out there. There's better 7-footers out there. There's more offensively talented guys. You're wrong. You're just wrong. 10 teams. I'm telling you, 10 to 14 teams are going to make the mistake of not drafting Zach Edey because they let the narrative win. But this guy is, how can I put it? You know, when they talk about when the second coming of Jesus comes, people just aren't going to recognize him and they're just not going to be able to tell that he's here. This is not the same thing. But if I
Oh,
were to tell you, but if I were to tell you Shaquille O'Neal came back as a half, if Shaquille O'Neal came back as a 7'3", 21-year-old, 300-pound guy, nobody would believe him. He'd just be walking around the league, not being valued. But he's right there, guys. This is a guy averaging 23 and 12. He has accomplished as much as you can accomplish in college basketball without actually winning a championship. And he has shown a mentality that I feel like is going underserved. This guy did not stay in college because he wasn't good enough. I think he stayed in college because he really, really wanted to win at that level and he wasn't going to be satisfied otherwise. But see, beyond his size, beyond his scoring ability, beyond the fact that he's shooting like 75% at the basket and 82% on rolls to the basket and 32 of 36 and cutting to the basket, beyond the fact that he could score you a billion points in the paint whenever he wanted to with really no regard to who else is on the floor. I think his mentality through his college career really matters to me. I think he's always worked on things and has chosen to develop his game every single year in a way to improve in the ways that he has seen all the doubts that people have for his character, for his game. He has worked on those things and he's coming into the league at a mature 21 years old. And I feel like that's going to matter. I feel like people talked about the fact that all he did was dunk, and so he added a push shot and a hook shot to his game. I feel like people said that he couldn't shoot threes, and he's been working on that. He has not done so much in the game, but I'm pretty sure he shot like 56% from three in the draft combine. And just the other day, I think he worked out for the Utah Jazz. And let me see here. I think he made another like 47 out of 100 threes that he took for them, something of that nature. So like he's not incapable of shooting a three, and he knows consciously that that's something that the NBA is going to be looking for, and so he's looking to impress there. People say he's slow, and he has been slow, but he's the fastest 7-footer in the combine in the draft right now. His foot speed, his lateral speed, his hip movement, all of those things he's worked on and worked on to the level where he is at least comparable to the people in the draft with him at this point in time. And so if you ask me if I want a guy who's 7'4", 300 pounds, who is healthy and athletic and wants to put the ball in the basket as much as possible and wants to block every shot that comes at the rim, I'll take him. I'll take him immediately. So really in love with this guy. I've obsessed in a way that is completely uncharacteristic to me. I'm not a very dramatic person. I don't make, wildly crazy statements like this. But this guy is the guy. And you guys should think so too. But I'd be curious to hear what you think, Micah. I know you aren't a believer in the Edey experience, and I'd be excited to hear why you would think such a sad thing.
You're right. Uh, I think first things first is going to be the size and speed at the NBA level and how he'll react to that defensively. I think this is someone that a lot of people have concern with playing even in a drop, even having the mobility to be like a Brook Lopez type player. Because to be clear, like there's a guy in this draft, Donovan Clingan, who's giant, but not compared to Zach Edey, but he's a very good defensive player. That's why he's going to get drafted in the top 10. People use Brook Lopez comps, Walker Kessler comps with him because he's that kind of giant rim protector. Zach Edey is not that. He was not incredibly great in college because of his rim protection or size presence. He got better at that, but he got better at that over the course of 4 years. And he was primarily valuable because of his offense and because of his low post scoring. And there's one guy in the NBA who's really valuable because of his low post scoring, and it's Joel Embiid. And almost every other big man brings either a ton of defensive help, which obviously Embiid does as well, like with rim protection, or there's playmaking with Jokic. It's a versatile position now, but I don't see how he's going to be able to justify being on the court if it's just going to be jump hooks. Like maybe the 3-point shot comes along, but then it's like, okay, well, now he's away from the basket. So now he's not helping your rebounding and he's not getting to his best look. Now you have like an average 3-point shooter out on the wing, but he's 7'4", and that doesn't matter now. I think his screen setting will be really valuable. He's a great screen setter, so you definitely like pry guys open around the perimeter. And ultimately, I just think he's probably going to be too slow to really contribute at like a starter level, but definitely like late in the first round, if somebody wants like a backup center to like kind of change a pace, I think that would make sense. But if you look around, you do see a lot of Boban comps, and I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not crazy. I'm probably the crazy one. But the only other thing I wanted to add is that this guy has also only been, while he stayed 4 years in college, he's also only been playing basketball since I think he was like 16. I think he may have been
Yeah,
playing
it looks
basketball
like it.
6 years total in general. And so the progress is he's made in his game in that context, it was probably the most exciting thing for me was that this guy has been playing basketball for 6 years total, like not no basketball before that. Was just playing basketball for 6 years and it's picked up so much in his game that I feel like he can continue to do that. And that I think it's, while he's not a rookie, like a freshman college rookie, the way we like to have them, I think in the context of like his mental abilities and his physical abilities, I think those are going to grow at a rapid pace because his like basketball age is so young. But Caelan, what are your thoughts? You got two other opposite ends of the spectrum here. You got a Zach Edey non-believer and a Zach Edey truther here. Where do you fall from what you've heard so far, and what questions do you have for us?
Um, I think the only player I like less than combo guards is big, giant, slow dudes. This is one of the reasons I was slow on.
No.
This is one of the reasons I was slow on the Jokic thing because I was just he's so just lumbering. But bro, this is my thing, bro. With bigs, they got to be mobile. Okay, if Wemby couldn't move the way he could move, he wouldn't be special. Even though he's so long and tall and skilled, but it's the mobility that ties everything together and makes Wemby Wemby. The same thing for Chet, a very mobile guy. Even a guy like Ivica Zubac, who I like a lot, he's incredibly mobile. Like he moves very well, right? And like I think Brook Lopez is such an outlier in what he did with his jumper. Dude, that's impossible. It's impossible to go from back back to the basket, post up center every time down the court, which is what he was in Brooklyn, which feels like 50 years ago, to just being an elite sniper that he is now. That's crazy. What did you say? Edey did 47 out of 100. That's not good. That's not good. I'm here to tell you guys, listen to this podcast, NBA players who cannot shoot way better than that. Dwight Howard, if you could Dwight Howard in the workout, I guarantee he'll make more than 47 out of 100 because it's just the way it is. Like these guys will drill them in warm ups. When Dwight Howard was in the Lakers, they would have all these stories about Dwight Howard's 3-point shooting in practice because he's just nasty. It's just NBA play. This is how it is. So I don't think the shooting is any type of realistic. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just not an Edey guy. Now, granted, I've watched like 2 minutes of Edey play basketball, so what the hell do I know? But it's really more the archetype that I don't like. And this is kind of how I think about basketball. So not an Edey guy. I don't like the big, slow, lumbering players. Yeah, when you said he played basketball for 6 years, it looks like it. It looks like he doesn't know what the hell. Like it looks like somebody just taught a polar bear how to play basketball, and then it's just I don't know.
Yeah, but if that polar bear averaged 23 and 12, you'd be like, I need that polar bear on my team. And I also need to see that in person. I get what you guys are saying. You guys just are having rational thoughts about the way the league is and the way that the league's going. And I am having disruptive thoughts that I
How
think
much
this guy's
stock do
going to
you
change
put in that 23 points? Like in the NBA, like if your team had Zach Edey, how many times would you want to watch a Zach Edey jump hook before you're like, oh my god, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like
I
he's
love it
just
because he's not doing that. I love it a lot because he's not doing that. He's not doing that he's not doing that at like 6'8", 6'9", 7 feet. Like, oh, he's going to get to the NBA and they're going to be much bigger and they're going to stop him. Like, he's still going to be huge by NBA standards.
So you think
And
he's
he's
going to jump
still,
hook people to death in the NBA?
because Rudy Gobert can't do that. And he's got the same situation. He's
Yeah.
huge and he can't do it because he
Yeah.
sucks at that.
Yeah.
Zach Edey is prolific at the rim. And while it's not as valuable of a skill anymore, I still think getting 2 points at a very high efficient rate is going to matter. Bro, he's averaging 23 points a game
Bro, that don't
just
mean
from
nothing,
post-up.
bro. Stop it. That doesn't mean nothing. Nobody care about 23 points a game.
Jason Tatum right now is averaging 23 with the worst shot selection in the universe. Like, if I can get it from just passing the guy the ball above everybody else, I like to keep things simple, guys. I like to keep it simple, and he's got a nice, straightforward
You think he's gonna be
skill
better
set.
than Zubac?
Yes.
What?
He'll be way better than Zubac.
Zubac is really good.
So Caelan is getting to what I wanted to get to, though. So, Lino, when you're projecting his career, how would you categorize it? Are you thinking like high-level starter most of his career, all-star a few times, all-NBA? Like, where do you see him
I'm
probably
thinking
landing?
3 or 4 MVPs.
I knew he was gonna do that shit.
2 first team All NBAs, Finals MVP.
Oh my god!
2-hour podcast segment
We're off
where
the
I just
rails.
danced the whole time
We're off the
talking about how
rails.
you guys didn't believe. I'm excited to come back here 2 years from now when he's won Rookie of the Year and Finals MVP in his first 2 years. And you guys are like, how did we not see it coming?
I will say, my friends Bryce and Josh have a running joke where every prospect I really don't want the Heat to draft, they draft, and then I love Hero and Jaquez being the two biggest examples. There's an infamous video of me at my friend's draft party when Hero was selected. And anyway, I love those guys now. I didn't want them, and I have a crippling feeling that this is going to happen.
Bro, the Edey to Miami stuff is getting kind of loud. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little loud.
Which is crazy because as much as I love him, we really have no use for another center on our team. Like, I love him. I would love to watch him play. I'm super excited about him. But just looking at the way our roster is built, it makes no sense. But hey, I'll take it.
We'll see. I really hope that doesn't happen. I'll probably put my Heat big board on Twitter pretty soon. But he is on there, and
who's the backup 5 in Miami?
Kevin Love.
Oh, come on.
I mean, you want to start a rookie 300-pound child?
No, I don't want to start him. I'm saying, like,
I mean, as your
a backup 5.
I'd rather sign Andre Drummond.
That's fair.
See, Andre Drummond can't do what Edey does.
I think he can.
Drummond,
I feel like
that might be the one player slower than Edey in the league.
See?
Listen,
See?
I will say it's going to be funny because he's definitely going to dominate Summer League because that's just like
yes.
So he's going to be going crazy.
He's going to be nasty. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
it's going to be like that year. It's going to be like that year. People don't know this is obscure, but this is one year that Josh Selby won Summer League MVP.
Mm-hmm. Oh, stupid!
It was nasty.
Stupid.
I don't even think he made the team. Like, they cut him after that. They cut him. He didn't make the roster. They cut him after he won MVP.
I would love an oral history on Summer League MVPs. I think Kent Bazemore won one.
Well,
I think
did
Cam
he?
Whitmore just won the past one. I
Mhm.
would be very interested to see what that trajectory is like because they pull the good guys after the first weekend. So a lot of
Right.
times it's
Yeah.
like undrafted role players. Well, that's a little draft talk for you guys. We'll be very interested to see where these guys end up. They are unique players, especially given their positional size. So be on the lookout for that. We'll have another episode coming to you guys probably sometime next week, maybe a full draft deep dive, maybe even a draft reaction, depending on when it's recorded. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, again, shout out to the Celtics or whatever. But
Shout out
Boo.
to
thank
Zach Edey, baby,
Buck
for taking
Foster.
them all the way.
so thank you guys for listening. For myself, Micah, my fellow hosts Lino and Caelan, this has been Irrational Confidence. If you have any Zach Edey questions, please email them to
Please.
confidenceirrational at
We have the answers.
gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, any other prospects you would like for us to talk about, also check us out on YouTube, Rational Confidence Pod, TikTok at Irrational Confidence Pod. Check us out. We'll see you guys very soon.